Alright, hi everyone, how's it going? And welcome to another video. Now, it's been a while since I've done a video. There's a number of reasons why that's been the case. For one, I moved. I also broke my phone, had to get a new one. But all the while this was happening, I've been thinking about different things that I would want to do a video on. And just recently I saw a movie called The Last Duel, starring Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Adam Driver. And when I saw this, I knew that I wanted to do a movie review on it. So this video will be a movie review on The Last Duel. Now, just some background info on The Last Duel. The Last Duel is based on a true story, and it's about the last government-sanctioned judicial duel that took place in Paris, France in 1386. That's what this film is about. Now, it's based upon a book called The Last Duel, which was written by an individual by the name of Eric Jaeger, who's a medieval literature professor at a university. He put out this book, and either Matt Damon or Ben Affleck, one of them got a hold of it, read it, and Matt Damon and Ben Affleck began writing the screenplay for this. This is the first screenplay that they've written since Good Will Hunting. So, this movie was also directed by Ridley Scott. And Ridley Scott has just made some incredible movies. You know, everything from Alien to Blade Runner to Black Hawk Down, Kingdom of Heaven, Legend, Gladiator, just so many great movies. He has a real talent of being able to create some great scenery, to be able to create great sets, to have great costumes. For example, like with Alien, he actually brought in H.R. Giger to design the sets for the movie Alien. And H.R. Giger really made the sets look kind of like one of his paintings. You know, he designed this like alien architecture that was unlike anything you had ever seen in a film before. So it's really incredible in that regard. Now, this movie's no exception. I think the sets and the costumes in this film are just fantastic. Some people did complain about there being like an overuse of darker tones and colors in this film. They were saying that the Middle Ages actually would have had more color, but nonetheless, I really felt that it worked for this movie. Anyways, the film starts out with this duel about to commence. You're seeing that there's this big arena. You could see Notre Dame Cathedral. And now here, I was a little turned off when I first saw this, but I was able to get past it. And the reason why I was a little turned off is it looked like it was kind of CGI, like maybe too much CGI, but I was able to get past it, and I don't think there's a whole lot of CGI in this film. I think it's mostly practical effects. But yeah, that was a little bit of a turnoff for me at first. But anyways, this duel's about to start. As the duel is about to begin, and as the two riders on horseback with their lances are about to clash, the action then stops, and then you see what happens and what the events were that led up to this duel. Why are these guys about to fight? You don't know, but you're about to find out. And the way they structured this film is they structured it in 3 points of view. You know, you get 3 points of view in this film. You get the point of view from the Matt Damon character. He plays a knight by the name of Jean Lacrouge. You also get the point of view from the Adam Driver character. He plays an individual by the name of Jacques Lecrie. And you get the point of view from another character played by a new actress, relatively new actress, by the name of Jodie Comer. She plays Marguerite. So you get the point of view of those 3 characters. Now, this was done in what's called the Rashomon style, and it's called that because Rashomon was a movie that was made by Akira Kurosawa, came out in 1950, and in that film you get the point of view of different characters. You see the same event, but you see that each character has a different interpretation and perception of the event that had occurred. That's what you have in this film. But anyways, first you get the point of view from the Matt Damon character. Now, to say a little bit about Matt Damon, I wasn't sure if Matt Damon would be able to pull off a medieval film. I don't recall seeing Matt Damon in a medieval kind of film before, but Matt Damon is a very good, versatile actor, and he definitely pulls it off. Delivers a very good performance in this film. He does have this like mullet kind of hairstyle, which I believe they had explained that the reason why he has this is he was so devoted to war. That was the main thing he was interested in. He wasn't really that interested in his appearance, so he would take like a knife or a dagger and just cut off the sides of his hair so it could better fit into a helmet. That's the reason why he has that kind of haircut. So, also, like I said, Adam Driver is in it. But first, you get the point of view from this Matt Damon character. You see that he's a warrior, that he fights for the honor of the king and for glory. And this film takes place during the 100 Years' War, which was when England and France were at war with one another. So he's off in England fighting battles. You find out that he was at one time friends with this Jacques Lecree character, but you find out a little bit more about their friendship later on. But anyways, he's off fighting these battles. He then returns. When he returns, he then goes back to his estate, but then he leaves and goes to Paris to collect the money from the king for his service in England when he was fighting these battles. So while this happens, the Adam Driver character, Jacques Lecree, pays a visit to his estate, sees his wife, and ends up raping his wife. So a rape occurs. The Matt Damon character finds out about this, but he doesn't find out about it until, after it had happened. He finds out about it. You don't see it happen from his point of view, though. You do from the other two characters' point of view. The next point of view is the point of view of Jacques Lecree, the Adam Driver character. Now, you can see this character is a bit different from the Matt Damon character. The Adam Driver character, Jacques Lecree, is a character who has elevated himself in society in a much different way than the Matt Damon character. The Matt Damon character has elevated himself in society because he is from the lower classes, but he's elevated himself through military exploits, through honoring the king, and as a result of this, he's, like I said, become more elevated in society. Now, the Adam Driver character elevates himself in society in a much different way. The way in which he elevates himself in society is a way that I would say is more like Machiavellian, where he's planning and plotting and forming alliances to elevate himself in society. Something much more akin to like cronyism is how he elevates himself in society. He forms a friendship with a character by the name of Count Pierre. Count Pierre is the cousin of the king, and he's played in this film by Ben Affleck. Now, at first, you don't even realize it's Ben Affleck when you see him. You don't even realize he's got this blonde hair. He's got this like medieval haircut with the bangs. He's got this goatee. You don't realize it's Ben Affleck until you do. You're like, oh my gosh, that's Ben Affleck. I had no idea. I've never, seen him in this kind of role. However, the character he's playing is kind of a scumbag, and I have seen Ben Affleck play these kind of scumbag characters before in the past, like in Boiler Room and whatnot. But it's been a while. I think most recently the things I've seen Ben Affleck do has been playing Batman. So anyways, this Adam Driver character forms a friendship with this Count Pierre, and they have a lot of these like wild parties where they do a lot of bad things, and you can see this. And the thing is they don't seem to realize that they're doing bad things. Anyways, what then happens is there's then a land dispute because this Matt Damon character, Jean Lacrouge, is getting married, and they show that he's marrying the daughter of like a wealthy landowner, and in the dowry, in the Middle Ages, in the dowry, you usually got land. So the Matt Damon character is expecting to get this land from his marriage. And what ends up happening is the Adam Driver character goes to the father of Marguerite, and he buys the land, I believe, for like a low price. And then, he buys it, but he buys it on behalf of the Count. The Count's essentially buying it, Count Pierre. Count Pierre then gives this land to the Adam Driver character, Jacques Legris. So Jacques Legris has this land, not the Matt Damon character, not Jean Lacrouge. So as a result of this Matt Damon character is kind of upset. He's frustrated. He also has some financial difficulties, and they do mention that. They mention the fact that there's a labor shortage going on, and you have to understand this movie takes place in 1386, just 30 years after the Black Plague had happened. So at this point, there was a labor shortage because supposedly the Black Plague had killed, I think the estimated number that I heard was 100 million people in Europe. So a huge number of people had died as a result of this Black Plague. And, the effects of this are still being felt 30 years later. Anyways, that's what happens. There was this whole land situation that further strained the relationship of the Matt Damon character and the Adam Driver character. But you also see the event, the rape, happen through the perspective of the Adam Driver character. He has a different way of looking at it. You could see that he views the Matt Damon character not as being very noble, but more like a hothead, having a temper, quick to anger. You could see that. He sees him kind of as a guy that's like, I guess, not very fun. And you're able to see that in his point of view. Then you do see the rape happen through his point of view. And then what then happens is he goes to a priest afterwards, and he confesses his sin. And the priest basically is on the side of Jacques Legris, the Adam Driver character. He basically calls Marguerite a temptress. So you could see right now that the priest is taking the side of this Adam Driver character. Why? You don't know. Maybe the priest was afraid of the Adam Driver character because supposedly Jacques Legris was supposed to be a very imposing and intimidating person. But you don't really know. I mean, what you do know is he does take his side. Then you get the third perspective. You get the perspective of Marguerite, and she also sees the Matt Damon character in sort of a less than honorable way, kind of a hothead, a bit kind of out for himself, self-centered, because this rape happens. However, when rapes would happen in the Middle Ages, from what I know, it was seen as a crime. Yes, it was seen as a crime, but it was seen as a crime against the husband because his property had been violated. It wasn't seen really as a crime against the woman, from what I understand. It was seen as a crime against the man. And you could see that the Matt Damon character feels that as a result of his property being violated, his honor would now need to be restored. And he tries to go to this Count Pierre, but this Count Pierre is friends with the Adam Driver character, Jacques Lecree. So there's not much he could do there. So he goes to the King of France and he demands a trial by combat. Now, at this point in history, there still were trial by combat. I do want to say a little bit about trial by combat. Now, trial by combat came from Germanic law, and it also was in the Nordic countries. You had trial by combat in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and also Iceland. Although Iceland, I believe, outlawed it in around 1000 AD, but you did have these trial by combats there. Now, in Germanic law, there were a lot of rigid rules surrounding trial by combat. For one, it wasn't often used. It was only used in situations where there was a lack of evidence and there were no witnesses. Then you would have a trial by combat, and the idea is that God would allow the righteous to win the trial by combat. Whoever won was the innocent person, and the guilty person would be the one who would perish in the trial by combat. Not all trial by combats were to the death. Sometimes they would be to first blood, but this one in this movie is to the death. Now, you also had trial by combat make its way to England, and that happened as a result of the Norman conquest in 1066. When that happened, the Normans brought it over because the Normans were Norse, and they brought their tradition of trial by combat with them, and it made its way into the law. It became a part of it. Although in England, they didn't call it trial by combat. They actually called it trial by battle. That was what they referred to it as. But same thing. And the last trial by combat took place in England in 1446. It was the result of a servant who accused his master of treason. Apparently the master had gotten drunk. They agreed to have this duel. The master thought he would easily win this trial by combat, but the servant ended up winning. He ended up killing his master and winning this trial by combat. Now, that did not put an end to this trial by combat stuff in England, because even though it was over and that was the last one, it still remained on the books. And it remained on the books until it was abolished in 1819, so centuries later. And that was because in 1818 there was an individual in England who was accused of a murder, and he demanded a trial by combat. And they looked and they saw that it had never formally been abolished. Trial by combat still existed in England, even though the last one had been fought in 1446. So anyways, this individual who is accused of a murder demands a trial by combat. However, the accuser doesn't show up, and it got thrown out. And then a year later, they officially abolished trial by combat in England. However, it did continue to occur in some places. For example, in Ireland, there was a trial by combat in 1583 at Dublin Castle, and that was about 200 years after the trial by combat from this film. So it did continue. It also continued in Scotland. There was one in 1597. So it did continue for a while. Now, what happens is there's this trial by combat. They agree. There is a bit of a trial going on, and they do talk about certain things. They talk about rape and how there was this belief. There was this belief in the Middle Ages that a woman could not get pregnant from a rape. So apparently the Marguerite is pregnant. And they just had this belief at the time. Anyways, they agree to this duel. They agree to the time and the place. It takes place in this like big arena area in Paris, France. And supposedly this duel was huge. People from hundreds of miles came to see it. They came to see what would happen. So you have the Matt Damon character, Jean Lacrouge, against the Adam Driver character, Jacques Lecree. They're on their horses, and they then charge at one another, essentially seeing what you saw at the beginning of the movie, although now you're going to see the whole thing. And their horses are running at one another. They clash. Their lances hit the shields. They smash. They then get more lances, and they then continue fighting. Now, at this point in time, there you see that there's no like guardrail between the horses like there is in a joust. That didn't happen until 1420, and this was 1386. So that didn't happen until later. Anyways, they continue fighting. One of them gets the other's horse with a lance. They both dismount. They're on the ground. They're then fighting hand to hand with swords and axes and daggers, and the duel certainly did not disappoint. I mean, there was a lot of action, as you would expect from a Ridley Scott film, because he did do Gladiator after all. So yeah, this duel did not disappoint. I mean, back and forth. Now, I'm a huge fan of medieval films, but one thing I never liked was I always felt that the armor and the way the armor was shown in medieval films was that it always appears to be not very effective. Arrows are easily able to pierce it. Swords are easily able to pierce it. But here in this duel, you see the armor doing its job. Blades are bouncing off of it. And so you really see the armor doing its job, and you could see how difficult it is for either one of these combatants to land a critical blow. I mean, they're going back and forth, they're grappling. Finally, the Matt Damon character gets the Adam Driver character on the ground, and he thrusts his dagger into his mouth, killing him. And the Matt Damon character then emerges victorious. The body of the Adam Driver character is dragged away. I think he's hung somewhere. But the Matt Damon character is victorious with his sword held high on a horse. I believe he got another horse because the one from this duel, was killed, I believe. But anyways, he's marching through the streets with his sword held high, and you could see that he, restored glory to his name, which is what he wanted. However, you do get a sense that he's self-centered because it was all about him, right? It wasn't about the honor of his wife and defending her honor. It was all about him. And Marguerite, is happy because if the Matt Damon character had lost this duel, she would be burned at the stake. Anyways, the duel is then over. The movie's not quite over just yet. They do go back to the estate of the Matt Damon character. She now has a son that's been born, and the movie then ends at this point. Now, a little bit of background information as to some of what happened in reality, to the Matt Damon character, Jean Lacrouge. Apparently, he had remained in England for a little bit longer, but was killed only a few years later when he joined up with a group of French knights. They went to Hungary, where they joined a Hungarian force to fight against the Ottoman Turks. And apparently, the whole garrison of the Matt Damon character, Jean Lacrouge, was wiped out by an Ottoman Turkish cavalry. And I guess he disappears from the historical record after that. So that was the historical aspect of what happened. The Matt Damon character, this Jean LaCrouge, did not live much longer. So, anyways, as a whole, like I said, I thought this was an outstanding film. I really did. And what I want to talk about next is why this film flopped. Now, this film was without a doubt the best flop that I had ever seen. But this movie flopped, and, people were trying to figure out why. I mean, I think I know why this movie was a flop. Now, Ridley Scott had said on the Mark Maron podcast that, he basically kind of blamed it on millennials. He basically said they're more interested in superhero movies in their phones than a big budget historical epic. And this was big budget. It was a $100 million movie. As of my making this video, it's only made $30 million at the box office, so it bombed. And this movie absolutely did bomb. And, he, like I said, he blamed it on millennials and looking at their phones and being more into superhero films. However, I didn't, see it that way. I saw it a little different. I think this movie bombed because of the marketing. It's been kind of difficult now, it seems, to sort of market films. There's been some really big movies that have been kind of buried because it seems like they kind of don't know how to market films right now. Do you do it the traditional way? Do you have lots of commercials on network television? But, are as many people really watching network television? I don't think as many people are watching network television as they used to. I know I don't watch as much as I used to. But, so, yeah, the marketing for this film was just not good. I heard about it maybe a couple years back, but barely. I heard a little bit about it, and then a few weeks ago, I looked it up because I was wondering, did that medieval movie with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck ever come out? And then I looked it up and I saw that it had, but I also saw and learned that it bombed at the box office. And I think it was because of the marketing. I didn't see any posters for this. I didn't see any billboards. I saw nothing online. Some people said they've seen a few things online, but not much. So this movie was not marketed well. And at one point in time, this kind of movie would have been huge, right? It would have been like the summer blockbuster, on the level of Braveheart or Gladiator. This movie was of that caliber. This would have been like one of those films, but that didn't happen. And you always do hear people, particularly from my generation, talk about how, they're kind of tired of superhero films and they'd like to see a return of these big budget historical epic movies. And, finally one comes out and it bombs at the box office. It was a flop. Now, I have seen other films that I really liked that also bombed at the box office. For example, Grindhouse. I really liked the Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez double feature Grindhouse. I really liked that a lot, but that bombed. Why did it bomb? I don't know, maybe at this day and age people just don't like double features anymore. I don't know. Maybe they didn't get the whole Grindhouse kind of concept and what they were trying to do when they made this double feature. That could have been that. Who knows? But yeah, that was another example of a film or a couple films that I thought were great that bombed. Also, John Carter. John Carter was a Disney film that I saw that was great. That completely bombed. It was a colossal flop. Why did it flop? Because people simply didn't know who John Carter was. That's why I think it bombed. They didn't know who John Carter was. John Carter was one of Edgar Rice Burroughs' characters. Edgar Rice Burroughs also had the character Tarzan, which everyone knows who Tarzan is pretty much. But most people don't know who John Carter is, and yet Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote a series of John Carter novels. But like I said, most people are unfamiliar with this character, so the movie was a flop, even though I thought it was excellent. I thought that was a good movie. I like John Carter. Anyways, yeah, so, that's what I wanted to talk about. Why is it this movie was a flop? Because it was a very good film. I really thought it was a good movie. Thought it was outstanding. Anyways, I wanted to do this movie review talking about this film. If you watched this video, as always, I thank you for watching. Have a good night.